Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mindset Mentors podcast. I am your host, Nikki K. Thank you for tuning in. This episode is really special to me because I feel like it really opened up my heart in so many new directions and new ways. And this is the most open-hearted I feel. The last 2 weeks, or maybe I would say even the last couple months, have been so transformational to me where I've really been kind of evaluating my life and how far I have come and how much growth I've had over the last 5 years and how grateful I am for it. It was not an easy path. There were so many lessons, so many teachers, so many failures, but then also so many passing grades that I got. So it kind of inspired me to make this episode about growth in general and how each one of us are growing in our own ways and how each one of us are in a different classroom and how we're each taking different lessons and meeting different teachers and having different classmates and making our way to the playground. And I've really had this really phenomenal realization about how life is a school and how becoming a student of life and really dedicating yourself to be a student of life is the most transformational thing you would do. So, if you're tuning in, I'm so excited for you to be here because I really hope I'm able to give you a little piece of what it is that I am feeling in my current life. And I have I haven't felt this much of peace and love and security within myself. I spent a lot of my life being insecure about my trajectory of life and how it wasn't panning out the way that I thought it should pan out, or it's not panning out the way that other people's lives around me are panning out. But now I have a sense of security within me because I can finally see myself and the patterns in my life and truly ground myself in how far I've come. And I guarantee you that if you take the time to listen to this podcast and then also kind of spend time with yourself and map out your life and how far you've come, you're going to have so much gratitude for yourself and perspective change and realizing that you are actually enough. You are actually enough in where you are. I know it sounds so cheesy to say, but there's one thing for me to tell you this, right? And there's one thing for you to actually feel it. And that feeling of feeling enough comes with time. It comes with you being patient with yourself. It comes with you just looking at yourself and spending time with really learning the trajectory of your life, really learning the patterns of your life, really understanding all of your past life events and how it brought you to where you are and all the curveballs in between and how you navigated it. It's almost like life will give you a problem, but it will also kind of guide you towards a solution. That is how life works. So, welcome to this episode. This is a really fun one. So, yeah, let's get into it. We always say how change is the only constant in life. There's also another piece to this where growth is the only constant as well in life. We as humans are always growing, we're always evolving, we're always changing. It's just that at some times or some points in life, we don't see what area of growth that's actually taking place in our lives. For example, a lot of us start out at the same level. We all start out as children in school, learning to, all the way from learning to walk and speak to then learning to go through education, go to school, making friends. Those are all little pieces of growth, right? We're growing in our education, we're growing in our intellect, and we're growing just in terms of becoming an adult. So that is how we all start out. Eventually, what happens is that after a point where we get to high school, we graduate high school, and then a major split happens where some people, yes, go off to college and then they start their college level growth, which is about living independently and trying to survive outside of their home. That is a form of growth. And there are people who go off and they go into the workforce right after high school. That is a different form of growth. So another major split happens also after college, and that's actually a bigger split that we all kind of experience, especially in 2025 where Yeah, some people just go off and they start building their career. So they're really growing in their career aspect of life. Some people go ahead and get married. So they're really growing in that space where they're growing and they're building a family. Some people go off and just go to the mountains and they start their spiritual journey. So that's where they're having their spiritual growth. Some people go off and start their businesses. So they're having their business growth. So we're all growing. And what we fail to see sometimes is that we may look at some other person's growth and we may start to compare our growth without realizing that we may not really be trying to grow in the same field right now. We're not in the same classroom right now. And one thing that I always say is how life is a school, right? Every time we go out and we interact with people, that life itself is a whole classroom setting where every person you meet is a teacher. When you go off and you go to the gym and you work out or you're playing a sport, that is a version of being on the playground where you're using your body and you're working out and you're getting in touch with your body and you're learning to and you're exercising yourself. When you come back home and you journal, for example, that is your form of a homework, right? Where you're bringing the work home and you're kind of reflecting on what happened over the day. And you're just taking a moment to just kind of process everything. That is a form of a homework. When you have really hard trials and tribulations that you go through, that is the way of the universe or God or life testing you to see what you have learned. And when you pass those tests, you come out the other side, that is your graduation. So the analogy of looking at life and every event within life as a form of a school, you learn to really become a student of that school. You really become a student of life where you're open to always learning and growing. And the thing about growing, like we talked about earlier, is that we don't fully understand what aspect of growth we're experiencing. And we especially don't understand this when that growth is more of a spiritual growth or a personal development growth. Because if you look at every other form of growth, right, let's say it's career growth, you have promotions and you have money or a house or a car that you can show for, right? That it shows that you have had that career growth. Same, for example, with a relationship or a family growth, right? When you're building a family, you have something to show for. You have a partner or children or a dog, or you have the home life that you have to show for, to show that you have had relationship growth or family growth. Or if you have business growth, you're able to show your your business revenue to show that you've had growth in that space. But spirituality and self-development, you have nothing to show for, right? You have absolutely nothing to show for. And then that's when we get so lost and we can't compare spiritual growth and self-development growth to any other form of growth, just like you can't compare career growth to someone's personal life or relationship growth. You can't compare someone's business growth again to someone's relationship growth. Like these are just different aspects of life and they're different classrooms of life, going back to the analogy of life being a class. So tuning into what kind of growth you are going through is really, really key in being able to bring your attention and focus onto yourself. And like I said, spirituality, spiritual evolution, spiritual growth, self development, personal development, all of these things have nothing to show for other than the only person that's witnessing that growth is yourself. And that is why it becomes more and more important to be able to look at yourself and say, hey, 2 years ago, I did not have the public speaking confidence, for example. Or last year, I was so scared I couldn't even go eat by myself. But now I can solo travel to anywhere in the world and I have that confidence within me, right? That is something that you have built from within. A lot of the times people have a glow up, right? And they've really worked on themselves. They will have a glow up and it physically, they may have glowing skin, glowing hair, maybe a more physically fit body, maybe they have better habits. So those are certain ways that your self-development and your spiritual growth will kind of show up. But obviously that cannot be compared to another aspect of someone else's growth. Another thing that happens also with growth in general is that you will see after that split that we talked about, right? Like after college, we all go off on career, business, family, spiritual, self-development, like all these different facets, and we all kind of expand ourselves. What happens is that you will see that once a person has reached a ceiling of a particular space of growth, they will usually shift into another classroom and focus on another form of growth. You see this a lot when people go for years and years, maybe like grinding and hustling in their career, and they get to a certain point after they've got all the promotions, they've got all the money, they've got everything that they really could get for their soul to get that kind of satisfaction in their career space. Their soul kind of starts pulling them towards another classroom, aka another field, another aspect of growth. A lot of people after the career growth will go into a spiritual growth, for example. And then they really start their spiritual journey, their self development journey. You may see that they start traveling more. You may see that they're listening to more podcasts. Maybe they take a career break and maybe they kind of focus on reading more. So their habits kind of change, right? So they're kind of like, again, mastered their career goals, for example. They really mastered that growth in their career space that their soul was asking for. And now they're shifting and starting again from grade one at that spiritual and self development growth classroom. Similarly, someone who has spent a lot of time, maybe right after college, they decided to go off, get married, and start a family. After a certain point of life, maybe after their kids are in their upper teens and maybe at a place where they can take care of themselves, you'll see a lot of moms or dads who decide to like make really big career moves and career changes. I can speak for from a female perspective, right? I know a lot of moms, stay at home moms who kind of stayed home after college, got married, and really focus their attention on growing and developing themselves to be a mom, which obviously takes up so much of your internal and external self. And it's a lot of work, right? I mean, moms work so hard. But after the kids get to a certain level where they can kind of take care of themselves, you will see a lot of moms go back into the workforce and they decide to kind of maybe start a business. And then they've reached their max level of growth in that family and home life space where they now have enough capacity within them to maybe step into another classroom and maybe start their own business or maybe go back to the workforce and like start building their career again. And similarly, you'll also see someone who has reached a certain level of max self-help and spiritual growth, after which their maybe their soul starts calling them for growth in another field. They may meet someone and get married and decide to have a family, or they may decide to start their own business based on their spiritual growth. So, all to say that we as humans are always growing, we're always evolving, and we really have to allow ourselves that space and time to look at how much growth we are doing on a consistent basis, how we are showing up for ourselves consistently. Sometimes it's not even conscious, right? Sometimes it's just subconsciously we're making certain decisions in our lives that are taking us towards that development and that growth within that specific classroom. And not everything is conscious. Of course, when you have a certain level of self awareness, you're able to see how your actions directly make an impact in your daily life. But a lot of times, I mean, back in the day, I mean, humans have been doing this forever. I mean, they've been doing this for millions of years, and not all of it is very conscious, right? Not everything had to have that sense of awareness that was built into it, which is why I'm obviously going to take this into a spiritual level and talk about the universe and God, because sometimes it really does feel like we're puppets in the hands of the universe, where we're just kind of put on here with certain kind of pre-designed life events. And we just kind of ride the motions of it and we just do what we need to do, what we're supposed to do. But now, with spiritual evolution rising, and so many of us are being called to meditate and do all this self work, there is that added level of self awareness. So, does this mean that it takes away from the fact that we still maybe are puppets of the universe? We're just more aware of it and we think that we have some kind of free will when we're acting, when we make actions and we're creating certain behaviors. I wonder if we didn't have that awareness, would we still be performing the same acts and doing the same behaviors because that's what we're predestined to do, right? I mean, that's a whole philosophical conversation. But for the purposes of this podcast, what can we do with this understanding, right? What can we do with this level of awareness? What I have come to realize over the last 5 years that I've been on a very spiritual and self help kind of path is to just kind of realize how beautiful every single person's life is in their own way. And when you look around, you start to see your friends, your old classmates, your extended family members, your cousins, the people around you, people you work with. You notice that everyone is in a specific mind space where they're growing in some shape or form that is the most apt, or that is the most chosen by their current level of existence in their consciousness, right? And what happens is that you no longer are at a place where you feel any kind of envy or jealousy or comparison to anyone, because you realize that we're all in different classrooms. Okay. And sometimes you may be in the same classroom as someone. And that's what I've noticed with my friends. So there's a group of my friends that were all in the same like spiritual self development, self help space. And I joke with them about this because I say, hey, we're all in the same classroom, which is this spiritual self help development classroom. And we're always like, we're comparing notes and we kind of share different life events that we've been through. And we're like, hey, like I had this thing happen to me and this is what I learned from it. And it's funny enough because another friend of mine would say the same thing, like, hey, this the same thing or a version of the same thing happened to me and this is what I learned. And we compare notes. And it's so beautiful. You can't put a number to it. We can't really put an age to any of this stuff. It's not like we actively choose what growth we want to experience. From at least from my experience, I have never really had been in a place where I'm like, okay, this is what I am going to focus on now and grow here. I felt like I kind of did that up through college, and then even like 5 years after college, while I was trying to build my career, I honestly don't know if that was my free will to do that. Although I thought at the time it was my free will to do that, or if that was just part of my life design in a way. So I was just kind of going through the motions of it. And 5 years after that, and then that's when COVID happened, I was pulled so fast into the space of self-development and spirituality. And I was growing so rapidly in that realm. It's not that I didn't care about my career as much, but it's just that it was not in the front of my mind, so to speak. My career, I'd kind of figured out how to kind of navigate my career in a way, so that growth was not really as important to me as my spiritual growth was. And now, at my spiritual growth, 5 years in, I do feel a pull towards another phase, another aspect of what I believe my soul is now looking for. And I don't want to talk about exactly what that is, but I'm feeling this pull towards something else that I'm like, okay, so I'm not gonna fight this pull. I'm not going to force anything about this pull, and I also don't want to speed up this process. I'm gonna allow my soul to kind of just do what it's here to do, because from my experience, it's just I come to realize that for the most part, you kind of have to just go with the flow. And when life tells you to act a certain way or do something, you show up to that thing with your 100% and you just kind of let it go. So, learning to kind of look at how the patterns of your life work and the cycles of your life, you just find so much more joy within yourself and your life. And only when you have joy and love and just fulfillment within yourself, you're able to see that for other people as well. Because if you don't have that kind of fulfillment and anchoring within yourself and that true, honest love for your life, you're always going to look at someone else and you're going to compare, and you're always going to end up in suffering, because that comparison is never going to match up to what you think your life should be. And life never works that way. I'm gonna tell you right now, like if that is the path that you're on and that is the path that you've always been on, where you always want to one up other people, trust me, I was there a long time ago and it didn't make me really any happy, because there'll always be someone else to one up. And you're always going to then end up being running and chasing and chasing and chasing, rather than sitting down and allowing the things that are meant to be in your life come in and stay. And when things that are meant to be in your life come in, they stay, and it stays with a lot more longevity, and it stays with a lot more peace and calmness in your mind. Most of the time, because we don't fully understand which classroom we're at and knowing what phase of growth we're in, we're always going to feel like we're not enough. the only reason we don't feel like we're enough is when we're comparing ourselves to other people. So this feeling of not feeling enough kind of goes away when you realize how beautiful your life is and how beautiful the plan of your life is. And nothing is guaranteed, right? And you also shouldn't feel like you're entitled to something. Just because you feel like you're entitled to have a 6, 7 figure business, and maybe also you put in the work for it, so then the more work you put in, you feel more entitled towards it. That is also going to lead you to sadness and a lot of suffering because that's also not guaranteed. So, understanding what life is trying to teach you and dissecting yourself and seeing the ways that you are growing will really help you in anchoring yourself in your present reality. And it will help you show up for other people with so much more joy because you are going to be filled with joy yourself. And something that I notice that happens usually when we're jumping from one classroom to the other, one phase of life to another, or one growth to another aspect of growth, is that there's a little piece of discomfort, right? So think of it almost like you're going from one classroom to the next classroom, and now you have to kind of get familiar with all of the new people in that classroom, right? So you're gonna have to make new friends in that classroom. You gotta get familiar with your new teacher or your new teachers in that new classroom. You're gonna have new projects, you're gonna have new tasks, you're gonna have new exams, new tests. And it takes a little bit for you to get comfortable with that new environment and that new setting and those new people. So yes, there of course there's going to be discomfort. If you're jumping from for let's say if you're jumping from your career growth aspect of life and you're jumping into personal family growth aspect of life, of course it's going to be more difficult, right? You are let's say you are someone that has worked really hard in your career, you've hustled all your life, and now you're at a place where you want to start a family or you want a relationship and you want to build your home life, that is going to stretch you as well because a lot of the habits that you probably had in your hustle life and your single life, you can't bring that into your relationship and family growth life, right? Maybe you're going to have to let go of certain habits like video games. Maybe you have to let go of abuse of alcohol and drugs or having toxic people in your life. You're going to have to let go of these things in order to fully step into that new classroom and that new space of growth, which is why, of course, it's going to be uncomfortable. And the key to kind of handling this discomfort is to accept that it is going to be uncomfortable. A lot of the things that I have had to do in my life, I had to go through periods of I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know what's right, what's wrong. But there is a underlining quiet voice within you that knows exactly what you need to do. And the interesting thing is that thing that you need to do is something that you usually don't want to do because it is uncomfortable. Right? So like the going back to the same example where let's say maybe you are addicted to partying, doing drugs and abusing alcohol, but you have this new desire in you to step into the new classroom of building a stable home, maybe dating and having a wife and kids. If you see that in your future, you know that you're gonna have to cut out these bad habits. You know you gotta do that. But a lot of times people will cope and they will say, oh, well, if it's meant to be, it will be. Or if the universe wants me to meet my person and settle down and have kids, then I'll do it. Or they might say something like, well, the girl or the guy, they better love me for who I am and they better see me for who I am. That's how you'll cope with your bad habits, which will keep you from stepping into that new classroom that you actually desire. So, if you want to make some real positive changes in your life, where you want to step into new things and grow in a more healthy way rather than being stagnant in the same old classroom, you're going to have to make actual tangible physical changes that will align you to that person that you want to become and you want to grow as. So know that it's going to be uncomfortable, but know that once you make those changes, the universe will swoop in and it will swoop in so fast, and it will start supporting your alignment, and it will start making certain changes easier for you. And that's where meditation and prayer and all this helps, where you have to kind of sit with yourself and pray to God, ask universe, or if you don't believe in either of that, just ask life to make it easier for you. And it will. That's how my life has worked, or that is a pattern that I've noticed consistently in my life over the last 31 years, where you set an intention and you do the best that you can to align yourself with that future version of yourself. And you will start seeing the universe winking at you with all these different new opportunities that come your way. And it's the most beautiful thing. It'll give you hope to kind of get up and keep going again and again and again. Not to say it's going to be easy, right? Of course, it's not going to be easy. Of course, there are going to be certain times where you go down certain paths and you're like, oh, this path doesn't really give me what I thought it was going to give me. And then you maybe fail or you fall. But then there's a lesson in that too. And that's when the lessons in that new classroom or that new aspect of growth, you'll start attracting those experiences. And it's the most beautiful thing. So I hope you were able to get something out of this episode. My intention with this episode was for me to just allow you guys to look at yourselves and look at how far you have come. All those struggles, all those hard decisions, all the hard work. You're here, and a lot of us sometimes we feel stuck and we feel stagnant and we feel like we're behind or we feel like we're not enough. And all of these things that our mind tells us, we just have to kind of remind ourselves that we're all in different classrooms. We're all taking different lessons, and we're all taking different exams, and it's all at a different pace as well. So to be really kind with yourself and be trusting in yourself and your universe, And I'm saying your universe because I feel like our universe is also so personal to us that there's certain things that will happen in your life or certain patterns in your life that you'll notice are designed specifically for you, and they're designed with you in mind and your personality in mind and your likes and dislikes in mind. And it's so personal. It's so personal. It's so unique. It's so different. It just does not make sense to look at one person's growth and compare it to another person's growth, or look at one person's success and compare it to another. You start looking around, you start actually noticing how beautiful every single person's individual life trajectory is, including yourself. You will just have so much awe and so much love for life, and it's the most beautiful thing. So thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you on a next episode. Subscribe to me wherever you're listening to this podcast, and I will see you on the next episode. This is Nikki K signing out. Bye.